Greetings and salutations, all you beautiful individuals. It is another epi of League on Puck. My name is Eric, flying Han Solo on today's epi 4. We did it. We got there. The only Game 5 of quarterfinals. And of course, it's T1 delivering it in the main hope of the LPL matchup against anyone's legend. And there were a lot of legends, legendary performances, legendary players on the Rift for this one. Far and away, the most hyped series of quarterfinals. Hanwha Genji absolutely delivered in its own right. But this was very much on the edge of your seat and fully testing how potent the plot armor is for T1. And it turns out it's pretty potent, as we gotta start right in Game 5 action for this one, because it didn't go 40 minutes, but my god, this game was back and forth and on a knife's edge. Second time this event we've seen a tanky Mundo get completely blown up. We got the Mel for Faker in Game 5 after he had already pulled out the Anivia earlier in the series, but this was all about the gliding out of your boy Guma on the Ashe. They had a 3v5 scenario to prevent AL from getting onto the Baron, and Guma, despite Doran completely abandoning him to try and play Assassin Renekton, which doesn't work, killing the Syndra. The kiting from Guma delays the Baron, even though Flandra survives with about 50 HP. It doesn't matter, and eventually he later is going to get caught out with the Ashe ulti, a bunch of other CC, but that Lulu ultimate keeps him alive for oh so very long time. Eventually he gets popped into the GA, but Doran actually does some damage in the backline this time, and Faker gonna flash in to clean things up on Shanks. 2 members alive for AL, and this is where the game gets absolutely insane, because the retreat out of them, Flandre actually survives that whole team fight and is now TPing back in, even though he was the guy who was engaged upon. We got a 4v3 scenario. They can't blow up Flandre right away. Guma's too low to really do anything, and Owner gets popped, and now we're just in a straight-up 3v3, but Faker is just laying down the poke. There's no ulti out of the Aatrox, no ulti out of Tarzan, who's also low, and we get a little bit more gliding out of Guma this time, who's at 100 health. You see how devastated Tarzan is in that moment, because he knows that's the whole game. That's the whole series. It ends up being just that. The Ashe Seraphine combo working wonders for T1, and the Mel pick as well was absolutely deadly. Doran was mainly a sponge to absorb damage, as well as Owner in this one. Still down in 6 kills as they're wrapping up here, but you just see the devastation on the side of AL. On the opposite side, it's Faker just taking a little sip out of his drink. Just business as usual for the GOAT on the Rift. But, man, you do feel for anyone's legend. You heard the electricity in the crowd whenever they would get a bigger gold lead, get a couple of picks, win a team fight. They were, by sheer force of will, trying to push this LPL team past T1. But we know what the saga, the script is for T1 against the LPL at Worlds. It's not good for these Chinese squads. And this is, again, like, by no means T1 playing at their peak. And again, they go down 2-1 in a series. They're down 4K in Game 5, and you still have both Kyria and Guma kind of chuckling. This team just, they don't even feel pressure, or they feel the pressure, but it's a positive type of pressure that makes them play even better. And that was even demonstrated in the game before we got to that bangerific Game 5 in Game 4, where again we had some not the spiciest picks, but we know that Gumayushi's Kai'Sa, and Kai'Sa in general, has been heavily criticized this tournament at the very least. She's been a stable meta pick for years, but Guma and Kyria absolutely leveled up in Game 4 to get things rolling for them from the very get-go. This was kind of the switch was flipped for T1 for me, because you saw Guma playing with that aggressive confidence that we've known and loved throughout his entire career, from the very first dive in the top lane in Game 4. And then, of course, we had some absolutely insane plays that multiple people have already talked about. The Kyria Nico performance, where he absolutely baits Hope and really the rest of AL with this fake clone. He just stands still on the Nocturne, and Hope walks right beside him, and it turns out that was the real Nico. The huge pick onto him there, and then an immaculately played team fight out of Guma, who survives with, yet again, a sliver of HP. And this is a case in point when T1 is at their absolute best. They're playing on the absolute limits of their HP bars, which we saw to get a gold lead in Game 4 and to get some of these comeback wins in Game 5. Absolute peak performances out of most of the players on here. And hey, how about a big shout out? Despite the loss, Flandre had an absolutely incredible series. The Aatrox game, the Mordekaiser game, he was playing carries. The Aurora earlier in the set was fantastic out of him. So Flandre doing his absolute best, and you saw him be highlighted in the teaser video, seeing T1 and Faker, just another opponent for him, another day on the Rift. Maybe it should not have been another day on the Rift. You need to change something against T1, but AL so unbelievably close, and even there were multiple team fights in Game 4 where it felt like they were getting back into it, but not really actually cutting into the gold lead. And time again, also Faker on the victor in that fourth game was just alive and well, outputting insane numbers of DPS to clean things up. As soon as they won that Game 4 to force the Silver Scrapes action, you had to feel like you knew. It was an inevitability that T1 was going to come away with this series, even though it was very, very dicey in that fifth game. But you felt like, I thought that this was the end. The first time they bow out in quarterfinals, Faker and T1 at the World Championship, because I felt like the momentum shift was fully there in this third game, yet one of the many very back and forth matches. But AL were playing so well. The snap engages, the split second decision making, and synergy that made this team one of the top squads in the LPL for the entirety of the year. Why they're further in this event than BLG is because they're so in sync and on the same page when they make these snap engages that Tarzan EQ's in on Jarvan. Everybody else, you know, they're following up. They know this is the right play. They trusted Tarzan, whether it's him, whether it's Shanks, whether it's Flandre, whoever it is. They were committed to it. And the team fights in this third game were just so insane. You have this Faker getting caught out. Looks like a peak moment where he baits an entire squad. He goes golden, not once, not twice, but 3 times with the Bard ult, the stolen Bard ult, and the Zhonya's. But he still ends up going down. And AL still end up winning this team fight to kind of, completely take over the game into their control. And you're thinking, maybe this is it. I'm feeling something special about this AL squad, who are still undefeated to this point at the World Championship. And of course, ultimately end up falling up short. But man, you feel bad for AL. Again, in the history books, a quarterfinals loss really will undersell what this team did at Worlds and what this team did throughout the entire year, because they were one of the brightest lights of the LPL throughout all of 2025. And credit where credit's due. They did all that they could and made T1. I mean, this third game, Kyria has an underwhelming, to say the least, Blitzcrank performance. Basically has no impact, which again is why it really felt like they flipped the switch, because then he has a fantastic Nico performance, has a pretty decent Seraphine performance, but him and Guma absolutely leveling up after that Game 3 loss. And especially you combine that with T1 almost having a comeback in Game 2 when Guma picks up a couple shutdown kills on the Draven to kind of get back into it. And it looked like T1 had a comeback to go up 2-0, and then this series would be completely over. But AL fights back to level the series and then win Game 3, all the momentum in their corner. But the plot armor fully activated for T1. They never really looked like they were sweating or tilted. It just really looked like AL felt terrible after losing some of those final team fights in Game 1, which I get it. So close to taking down these Titans, but it's the bare minimum for Faker, and that is making semifinals at the World Championship, which again is an absolutely nutty stat that he has been able to do that. But basically all 5 of these games were close. I don't know if you could say they could have gone either way, but they were at the very least very back and forth throughout, especially Games 3 and Game 5. But T1 against the LPL, it's inevitable, and now we're going to head to semifinals with another LPL. How does the bracket always work out? That it's the LPL gauntlet that T1 has to run through, and now we're left with Top Esports as the final hope for the LPL, which I don't think anyone would have been predicting heading into this event, and if they were, it was probably a disaster result for the LPL, because that means BLG and AL underperformed. Ain't nobody gonna say AL underperformed, BLG 100%, and Top Esports I think surprised a little bit, but do you really think now, after T1 being tested and leveling up, that Top Esports has a chance? This feels like an angle to say this is the big upset. Nobody's going to be predicting Top Esports to take down T1. Maybe this is the time they do it. I want to say it. My head wants to say that this is the time where Top Esports gets it done. But my heart can't go against the mojo that is T1. They just seem destined for, what is this, their fourth straight finals if they were to take down TES. By no means is this going to be a stomp of a series, but it would be the most colossal of historical upsets for Top Esports to be the one to break that LPL goose egg against Faker and the T1 organization. So for that reason, I feel like I should just say that it will happen. So I'm going to say it. Top Esports will beat T1 on the semifinals. That is the prophetic reasoning, and it's purely because the threads of the universe will it so in front of an LPL crowd. And more importantly, I think it's Gen G's here to win. And against T1 in the finals, can they do it on the world stage? That would be more cathartic, but I don't know if Gen G can do it. The mental against T1 in the finals. So it's got to be TES. I don't fully believe it, but I can see the path that fate is sowing. I can't see the path for KT beating Gen G, but imagine a world where the World Finals is Top Esports versus KT Rolster. I think that would be the disaster scenario for Riot Games. I'm sure a lot of people would make an insane amount of money if they had predicted those two squads would be in the World Finals, but I don't see KT getting the upset again against Gen G, and that's with this KT team overperforming expectations, shattering what people expected out of them coming into this event and this entire year, and being the only team that hasn't just not lost a series, but have let to use a game at the World Championship, 4-0 to qualify, and then 3-0 against CFO in quarters. So they haven't fully been tested. Well, they're most definitely going to be tested against Gen G, and KT just fully proving that the hyperbolic time chamber of the LCK Legends group is harder than the World Championship, as they, of course, went 0-6 in that regular season against Gen G, T1, and Hanwha Life. Not 0-6, 0-9. They played them 3 times, but I am super excited for these semis. Listen, T1 Gen G in the World Finals will absolutely shatter any viewership numbers that we've already had throughout the World Championship and other events, but I'm siding with a miracle TES upset. It doesn't. T1 seemed beatable. Just look at that AL series. They had to really pull things out. It's more, does the mental of Top Esports hold up? And if KT ends up beating Gen G, then I just don't know what to say. But you don't have to wait a full week for semifinals. They get going right this weekend, which means we'll be back on the Monday to break down all of that action from the Final Four at the World Championship. But that is it today for League Unlocked. My name is Eric. Thank you to all you stunners for hanging out and supporting us as always. And you know we will catch you on that flippity flip.